Thank you for coming. Yeah, we have a microphone. Great. Thank you for coming. We're having a quite short talk today about ideas I have about prototyping apps on iOS. Which tools we can actually use, which are from Apple, which tools we can use, which are from other developers, and basically showing you how to use your tools to the very best extent. This talk comes with kind of a hidden subtitle, and to discuss that a little further, I would like to do just a quick show of hands. Who has used Storyboards before in production apps? No. Who of you is actually an iOS developer? No one. Okay, this is kind of the complete opposite of what we have had during the last time. And during the last time, usually when you ask developers or iOS developers about storyboards, the first thing they do is they scream at your faces reasons why this is a bad idea. Because usually developers tried storyboards when they first came out. They were kind of a new technology and they had their flaws in the first versions. So every time you hear a developer complaining about storyboards, that's usually about the first versions. We got a lot better since then, and this is what I like to show today. And that's why we have this subtitle, A Reintroduction to Xcode's Most Hated Feature. It's actually not as bad as it seems to, and I'm going to show you some of my favorite things about it. So first, the usual question, who's here in front or here, pretty close, or aka the shameless self-promotion part. As you already have heard, my name is Jens Ravens and I work at a company called Nerdgeschoss, or in English, the Nerd Floor. We are doing sophisticated software for startups. So basically, we build the software other startups then actually sell us their own products. The kind of sad thing about it is that I'm usually not allowed to talk about what I actually do at work, but I'm pretty sure you have used some of our apps before. We are kind of stealth mode, just doing that for other companies that then sell us their software. And basically that's what we are doing. We are pumping out apps at a very high pace. And this is kind of also the basis of what I'm going to talk about today. We want to see apps on the App Store as fast as possible. And usually there are three phases if you want to do an app. The first one is you have some concept, some kind of idea, you want to test it. And usually the thing you do about it is you build an MVP, you show it to some users, and you get feedback. And that's also called the prototyping stage. We're going to talk about that a little bit. The next stage usually is then iterating, designing your app, and then finally actually doing the real app you want to sell. The one where you want to be the next major top 10 app on the App Store. And to do that, you actually have to build an app. If we go the native way, you have to use Xcode, you have to learn Swift, you have to throw together your little project to actually sell it in the end. And this is also a place where Storyboards can help you, and this is actually a major part I'm going to talk about today. So what I'm working all day usually is 50% Ruby, 50% Swift. Kind of a strange combination, but that way I have kind of a view on server side and client side, and this is what we are doing. We are iterating fastly on ideas, and therefore we just need a broad overview of the landscape. So also I'm logging on my website, it's called jenslavens.com. There you can also find all the slides of today and the demo project I'm going to show you. So if everything is too fast today, or if you just want to have a more thorough log, just go there. The URL will also be on the slides all the time. And if you ever come to Berlin and are interested in Swift development, I'm also hosting a meetup called Swift Berlin. We're about like 100, 120 people every month coming together talking about coding and iOS development. Okay, so far for the promotion part, let's actually go to some topics for today. One thing I'm going to talk about is why Xcode is actually a great way to prototype. Why should you use Xcode when there are so many tools out there? So as a designer, you maybe know Origami by Facebook, you know Flinto, you know Suitcase, you know whatever kind of tool is out there. Why should you actually use Xcode? And that is what the first topic will be about. I will teach you the basics of storyboard and auto layout. as at least for the first poll, we didn't have any iOS developers in here. This will be kind of the crash course on development for iOS. Then we will talk about custom views, how to make your code actually show up in Xcode and how to extend Xcode to show your own interface components. And in the end, we have some tips for everyday development, which is more targeted at iOS developers. So as we kind of have 3 times as many people now as during the start, I would like to repeat that poll. Who here is an iOS developer? Okay, getting more. Who has used Storyboards? Who hates Storyboards and wants to never use them again? Some. Okay, you have some more experience, I guess. Okay, I'm going to hopefully change your mind today a little bit. Okay, actually getting into the real thing. Most of the stuff today will be live coding or live designing, so I hope you can follow along. I will bump up my font size as much as possible. And therefore, I will show you some things we are going to build today. Okay, let's get started on the Xcode project here. You don't need to read the font size. The actual coding font later will be bigger. But first, I want to show you what we are going to build today. Okay. Because usually I'm struggling a lot, I always have this main question in every new city: where am I supposed to go? What do I want to see? And this is why we are building this nice app called Trip Master, which is just showing the nicest things around you and what you actually want to see. So once the app loads, we have this featured list of things. We have table views where you can scroll through. We have custom design buttons. We have custom font sizes. We have slightly changed default appearance for some app components here. We have the marketing department's favorite darling, the slider for content. And we have some transitions, custom sections down here. So still close to iOS guidelines, but basically every component you see in this app is slightly modified, is slightly custom, is actually changing something from the default behavior. And I tried to actually build everything of this app during this talk, and on the process tell you how everything works. So starting in here, okay, this, for everyone who hasn't worked with Xcode before, is called a storyboard. A storyboard consists of this big canvas where you can place things, and those things are called view controllers, or in the storyboard language, scenes. Scenes are basically one content or one piece of content on your device later on. So basically, one screen on your device will be one scene in our storyboards. And basically, storyboards allow you to lay out your whole application flow in a single file. Here we have completely empty storyboards because we want to start from scratch. And on those storyboards, or on this view controller in here, we can actually place things. So the first thing I'm going to show you is auto layout and how to lay out things on screen. Down here at the bottom, for those who haven't used Xcode before, is our object library. Basically, everything you can use in your application is down here. And then we can actually just pull it on screen, so have something here. And up here is the inspector, where I can change things about it. So let's give it a background color, have a second one here, also with background colors. Okay, now we're talking about mobile devices. Mobile devices have this problem of different form factors. We can have it in portrait mode, we can have it in landscape mode, we can have it on a TV screen, we can have it on a small iPhone, and even those iPhones come in different sizes. Basically, it would be really a pain in the ass to actually set everything up for every different device, and this is where auto layout comes in. Auto layout means you set up constraints between your views and describe how your views should relate to each other. And then auto layout does its magic, does some math, and basically figures out how to put things on screen. And basically you have 3 different ways of setting up those constraints. Constraints means just facts about the layout. So for example, I want to have this blue one here, up there, over the gray one by exactly the amount that we currently have. So I can either do a right-click drag between them and tell them, okay, keep the spacing you currently have. And here you see how they actually relate to each other. A fixed spacing doesn't mean too much. So the second way of setting up the constraint is down here, this layout button. The second one from the right gives you numbers where you can actually type in your pixels. So if you get a file from a designer and want to translate that into code, this is where you're going to look. So we attach it to the top, to the left, and to the right. And you see some more constraints. Now with actual numbers and colors on it. The first thing you will notice here is the orange constraints, which mean we have set a pixel size, but the view we have placed in here does not actually match what we told the layout to be. We told the layout to be 10 pixels from the left, 10 pixels to the right, and this is not what we have on screen. So it gives us this warning in orange. We have to do something about it. And basically the thing to do is the button down here, which got recently introduced in Xcode 8 before it was in another menu. It's basically the make everything okay button, which will just work or not. Let's give it a second try. Again, setting constraints, 10 to the left, 10 to the right, 10 to the bottom, and okay, second try. And then it will adapt to whatever kind of constraints we have. So from a designer's perspective, this doesn't sound too amazing because basically we just align things on screen. Interesting is actually the moment when we talk about different sizes. And here comes kind of project number one for those who worked in interfaceability before, is that you can have this preview selected here. Preview means you can place some real device sizes on your screen. Project number two, you can also place that on an external monitor and gives you a live preview of how your layout will look at runtime. So here we have seen the first view has some constraints. It is defined where it is supposed to be. And on the right side, we see how it will adapt for portrait and landscape automatically without you writing any code. The second view did not have any constraints except for the Y position. And that's why it's actually just going out of the screen. If we change that a little bit, if we just remove this constraint here, and now instead is 20 to the left, 20 to the right, and 10 to the bottom, with a fixed height. Then we see that actually our layout updates, and now it also is positioned no matter how we rotate our device. Okay, so far so good. This is kind of the basics 101 of auto layout. Now actually getting to some real, stuff for today. If you've ever worked with a prototyping tool, like for example Filter or Framer, they basically all have the same idea. You export your app as images, then put some touch areas somewhere, and then tell the system how to react when someone interacts with the touch area. So for example, if you do InVision prototypes, you click somewhere on the touch area and the next one navigates across the screen, and this is what we are trying to achieve now. Let's get started by cleaning everything up. Let's start with the basic image. Because we want to have an image in our app, we take the image view, we put it to full height, clip it to the edges of our screen, and I already imported the image of the app we are trying to build today. It's called content. It is longer because we later want to have some scrolling, and that's why we set the content mode to top, which just means put it to the top and then reach out to the bottom. Basically, now we have something that looks like an app and can actually be installed on an iPhone. You can distribute it via test flight, and you have the next major hit on the App Store. Not quite, but we had some functionality next. Navigation inside of iOS is usually done by having transitions between scenes. Basically, there are two transition types. One is on stacks. Stacks are, for example, employed by the navigation view, which just means navigation bar on top and then stacking stuff on top of each other. Another one is called modal presentation, or just modal views, where you just push up the screen from the bottom, which covers your whole screen and just kind of blocks your app until you are finished and interacting with the current modal. Let's do some basic push with a navigation controller. So selecting our current one, clicking on editor, and that in navigation controller. We get a new scene, which is gray and doesn't mean anything basically, and our next view, which is our old one, now with a navigation bar on top. Because now it's wrapped in this navigation stack where we can push things. And just for demonstration purposes, add another screen here, where we can push to. We just put a label in here that we can actually see that we are somewhere. Okay, how do we get from one screen to the other? Taking, for example, the first button here, the Learn More button. We just take a button, place it over here, delete whatever is on there, and set our type to custom, which disables some system magic on it. And now we can, again, with right-click or control-click, drag from that button to the next screen, make it a show segue, and if we now run our application, there we go. If we now run it and click on the button, you see we already have the navigation between screens. And basically, this replaces 90% of all the prototyping tools. First question, why is this better than other prototyping tools? Well, the main reason is it's already in your development environment. You can actually extend an existing app with new features just by adding them in the real app. You have the full distribution capabilities of iOS, so basically you can distribute your apps via test flight to your testers. You can compile them, you have them on your app, and basically without any additional software. Fact number 2, all animations we do in here are based on real animations because they are real animations. We don't have to try to convert them to animations somehow. They are just real from the first moment on, and they just feel natural. You have the swipe from left gesture to go back in the screens. You have real bouncing during scrolling. And this is actually what I'm going to show next, how to do scrolling. But basically, everything from this moment on is just natural and real. So no need to imitate anything from the system. Okay, as you've seen before, the screen is a little bit longer. It would be nice to scroll. And for scrolling something, there is something called a scroll view. So emptying out the screen, we are taking a scroll view. Again, make it cool. Okay. And inside of that scroll view, again, we can then add an image view. For those who are the developers in here, you know that scroll views are a little bit tricky sometimes because you have to determine how big the content is that is inside of the scroll view. And since iOS 5 or 6, it is actually possible to do that via auto layout. So if the constraints inside of the scroll view are deterministically showing how big the scrolling content is, the scroll view will automatically adjust for you. And this is also the case, of course, for images. If again we just take our image view in here, say it's top, then we have to say how big the content actually is. So we pin the content to the scroll view, which is not yet completely enough. Because now we know how big the image is depending on the image, so we are taking the image's size, but actually we want to constrain it. And here's the third version of setting a constraint, and that is by control dragging within the layout. So in here we see the layout. We have our host view, then we have a scroll view inside, and inside of that scroll view we have our image. So from the image to the host view, and just say, okay, they are just the same width. If we now run it, you see here, now we have a complete scrolling application, including content insets from the top, including the background effect that usually are not possible in other prototyping tools. And we actually have something like a real app. Okay, so far for the interactive image approach. This is basically what other prototyping tools do and which you can just perfectly do also in iOS. If you want to do mobile windows, that's of course possible as well. So again, for a button, placing it over here. Setting it to custom and removing the title. We can move on here. This time doing present modally. And if we run it right now, you can see the difference between push and modal animation. Come on. Maybe not yet big enough. Okay, something here is not working good. Let's skip this part. Okay, so you've seen basically everything you can do in the prototyping tools on a graphical interface is also just possible here because it's basically just sticking images together and making them interactive. Going one step further, and now actually some interesting stuff for the iOS developers in here, because I know you're getting bored because I'm just showing really basic stuff. Now we kind of switch gears and go into the development workflow. So let's assume someone already has built a prototype app this way from a designer, and this is handed over to you. That way you can actually just start building on the prototype and just enhance it with code. And enhancing with code goes via several different ways, and the way I'm going to show you today mostly will be subclasses. So we have decided this screen here is pretty good and we want to keep it the way it is. Let's build this as a native app. So just cleaning it up, removing everything in here. And the first thing you want to do is some kind of buttons, because this is kind of the most sophisticated, well, not sophisticated, but most customized element in here. We have this custom button design, and let's start by building this. So we take an image view as a background. So we have something to show to you. I've prepared some image here. We will make it stretch and set it to aspect 2. And this way we have a background where you can actually see what we're doing. Next up, taking a button. Because this is what we're going to call the button, so we're going to subclass button and make it a little bit different. So putting it in here, going to code. So as I told you, we are going to subclass our button. We will call it outline button, and it will inherit from UI button. Next big question, and this is usually something where people start throwing things at me, is the question where to override this. Because one way would be to do it in the initializer, one way would to do it in some lifecycle methods. But there's like one drawback, and that is all those methods are not invoked on all paths. Basically, there are 3 ways of displaying the button. One is it's initialized via code. One is it's initialized via zips or storyboards, or the third one is it's initialized in the storyboard itself and previewed. There is not really one code path where all of them go through, unless we reach layout, and this is why I'm today going to override layout methods to customize that stuff. It's not the most performant way, but usually just good enough. So basically overriding layout subgroups, just calling super. We are going to add something. So we have a button. What do we need to change to actually make it look like the button we desire? The first one is, of course, an outline. So let's set that layer which color to set it to. We already have the concept of tint colors in iOS. The tint color is the dominating color for interactivity on a screen. And we can just inherit that. And we're just going to do that. The tint color of a button is also the color of its label, so we can just take that one. So tint color, and convert that to car animation colors. And the next one, okay, we have a border, we have a color. Let's see how this looks. We are in here. We are changing our class, so instead of a button, this is now an outline button. And as you see, we still have the default appearance here. To actually see our button, we have to run the app and see how it looks like. This is kind of breaking the workflow, but here we see the button is here, we can click it, it works. But always starting the app just to look at a button is kind of cumbersome. And this is why there is something great, and this is called ID Designable. Introduced in Xcode 7. By now, I would say it's even stable. Xcode 7 was kind of flaky. In Xcode 8, it's working good enough, at least for my purposes. And you just enable it by calling it ID Designable instead in front of the class, and it just tells you this thing can modify your storyboards. It can be displayed inside of this storyboard. So the next time I switch there, we have to wait for a moment, and you see here in the background it actually is compiling our code. It's running that code on an internal simulator, and then displays the button as it is rendered right here on screen. And you see the color is here. So now let's change the color, because blue on gray doesn't look too great. We just changed our tint color to white, and there it is, but it took a while. Let's try something else. The next one is we would like to set some corner radius on there, because right now we have the sharp edges and we want some round edges. So taking again the layer, setting our corner radius to 3. Wait, going back to our storyboard, waiting a moment, and there we go, we have round edges. So far, so great. But wouldn't it be nice to change those corner radiuses? Because if you are a developer as me and you're talking to a designer, there will be this glorious moment where the designer comes to you and tells you, oh yeah, this awesome new idea, but we have to change all our buttons from 5 pixel radius to 3 pixel radius. And this is usually the moment where you love your designer because you have 500 places in your code where there's a value hard-coded, and now you have to change it. This gets a little bit easier, and we do it this way. We define something new, a variable, for our corner radius. It will be a float. We set it to 3, and here set it to the corner radius. Not that new, actually, because we are just extending it to a variable. But now, thanks again to ID Designable, there's also something called ID inspectable, which means this is a property you can define, and this property is meant for designing. So, going again to our button, you see here, there appeared a new field for us called corner radius, and in this field we can actually change something. We've given the default value of 3. We change it to 10, and as you see, nothing happens in here. This is usually the first thing you notice when you work with designables and inspectables. If we go to editor, refresh, it will recompile, but again, not really what we're expecting. Why didn't it update? Well, basically because we didn't tell it to. We are just setting a variable, but setting a variable doesn't invoke anything. And the easiest way, and this is the reason why I did this whole thing in layout subviews, is that if you change something, you can do a did set, and inside of that did set means layout. Which basically just tells the system, every time this value is changed, please lay out my new scene. And there we are, with a pixel size of 10. And if you change it, you see the button will just update immediately. Because basically, and this is kind of the first aha effect, is this button is running in the simulator and it actually keeps running. It's just not rendered and then the updates, but basically it is rendered in the background and that simulator keeps running and you have to tell the simulator what to do. Okay, we know about inspectables, we know about navigational. Let's get on to something a little bit more cool and something a little bit more useful. Usually the nightmare of every developer are sliders. Sliders are kind of hard to set up because they need to look nice in the end, they need to feel nice, but sometimes you can actually use a shortcut. And this shortcut I'm going to show you now is based on short sliders which have static content, which is actually often what we need. So marketing loves sliders, so let's just do a slider. A slider is something that is scrolling, so let's take a scroll view, place it on the screen, give it some dimension with auto layout. So again, we pin it to the edges and give it a fixed height. Next, inside there, we need somehow to tell what is inside of that slider. We need some kind of content. Let's just go with a view and put this in here. So this will be the background for slide number 1. Inside of our slide, we will have an image, also as big as the parent. So taking one of the prepared ones. Okay. So now talking. About constraints. How are they supposed to go that we get automatic scrolling in here and that it actually works? Basically, we are setting the image, because it's a background image, to fill its parent. So again, 0, 0, 0, all around. The view inside has actually to share its view, has to share its space with another view, so we will have another background view later. Let's just put it right next to it. And then you can click on this button, which this one here. So we take those views and put them in a stack view. A stack view means, basically a stack view is kind of a shortcut on setting up constraints. Constraints, as you've seen before, are those layout guides which exactly tell where each edge is supposed to be. Stack views are more like flex boxes on web development, so you define a container and then the content will just be distributed automatically. So now let's just do that vertical, because we want the vertical scrolling on the stack view. Okay, yeah. So we have one view here, and now we have to tell this thing where to go. So from here, we tell it it's just as big as the scroll view, and it's also just as wide as this view. Same for the next one, also same with same height. She prepared that, so usually this is where some bit of fiddling comes around, and this is why I actually prepared it down here. So again, we have the same thing. We have this stack view, which is just aligning this stuff next to each other. We have two slides in here, which are managed by the stack view, so that way you can just add more slides to your stack view. And basically what you have to do in the end is just disable the scrolling indicators. And this is kind of the magic box called paging enabled, which will just make this paging behavior work for you. So basically from the moment on where we said this is paging enabled, we have the fixed scroll size, you can just page through those views and we snap to the borders once we let go of those views. Okay, so far for scrolling. Now actually to one of the biggest questions about storyboards. How do you manage the distributed state of your UI elements? So if you think about labels, for example, we have a designer which told us our font for this app will be font X. And we set all our labels manually through Xcode to this font. We have a problem as soon as this font changes. Because iOS updates get updated, we have new designs, we have new paradigms, then we have Apple announcing a new feature about labels, and suddenly our whole storyboard is outdated and we have to manually update every single label, which kind of sucks. The same is true also for colors, for dimensions, basically everything that is kind of a hard-coded value in our storyboards. It's kind of hard to manage that over the life cycle of a project. And one way of fixing this is actually using subclasses and then using IB designables to make them show up. So I created one subclass for label. Going back to our demo. So talking about the usual cell we are designing, we have some kind of image view, giving it a name, giving it a spectral, and I created something called editor view, which will automatically just make this round circle that we are expecting. Then we have labels. One label here, one label there. And now the idea is to just put all your designs, just like in web development, in a style sheet. A style sheet doesn't have to be a new format or something. The style sheet in this app is just plain Swift code. So basically everyone who can edit Swift code can also alter the design. And this is done by using a subclass I named styled label. Styled labels are just automatically adapting the style they are supposed to have. And usually you can just make components out of all your user interface elements. So you have something like a headline, you have something like body text, you have some captions. Basically they just fall into those categories. So here we have this new one, and so let's make this title. Then do it again. Okay, there we go. So we have a title, body text, and if we maybe have something in here, also make this a styled label and give it our viewer class. We can actually move all of our layout code into one file, have it distributed over the app, and have previews inside of Storyboards. The only drawback we currently have is that up there it would be nice to have some kind of dropdown. This is currently not yet supported by Xcode, so designables are strings, are numbers, colors, and basically everything you could set in the old days of Xcode for runtime attributes. One thing you cannot yet set are enums. And of course enums would be really nice, and there's already an open radar for it. I hope we will see that in the next version of Xcode. But basically as soon as this is there, we could have a nice dropdown up there, including all the styles you have defined as a designer, and just select the style you want to have for that label. This works for buttons, this works for components, this works for entire view hierarchies. Basically, you can build everything by those dropdowns, custom subclasses, have a real preview of your app. And one thing you might have noticed during this whole we change attribute thing is I haven't run the app yet, because everything we could do was right there in Xcode. So as a developer, you just get a huge productivity boost by just using those live coding or live designing in this case, where you just get a live preview of what you're doing. You can, on the one side of your screen, just type your code, and on the other side, directly see the results inline in your app. Basically without running and without compiling. This is a huge time booster. Okay, we have seen how to change something. We have designables. Let's do one last thing, and that is debugging. Hopefully, all of your code is 100% bug-free. I don't think so, so let's just see how we can change that. So let's think about our button and if it makes something strange. So let's do our offline button. But we want to see what happens inside of that drawing method, because something is behaving flaky, something should be differently. And you can just do that by setting a breakpoint wherever you want to have it. Then go to your screen, and up at Editor, there is something called Debug Selected Views. And as soon as you do that, we're attaching a debugger directly to Storyboards, which means you can even do debugging without running your app. So as long as you're doing actual layout code, you don't have to run this in Node anymore, except for, of course, seeing animations and user interaction. But basically, you can just do the 90% of the user work, 90% of the UI work already in Xcode. Okay, we've seen overriding properties. We have debugging. One last thing I want to show you is some common misconceptions. So going back to the slide. My favorite part. Why developers don't use storyboards? Because we've seen they are so awesome and they will just make our lives easier, better, and more understandable. And the next time a designer comes to you to change some label, you can just tell them, well, change it yourself. So why don't we use storyboards? One thing I always get is storyboards are bad for teams. Because, of course, they are big files and we will have some merge conflicts. The answer to that is not so much anymore. It got a lot better. It's just XML. XML is pretty easy to merge, and so far in 4 years of using storyboards, I didn't have a merge conflict so far that I couldn't resolve. So even for complicated storyboards, this is not as scary as it actually seems to be. Second part is, as soon as you open a storyboard, it gets changed by Xcode. This is one of the most annoying features of Xcode. And thanks to the developer team, it has been resolved in Xcode 8. Now, so those files only get changed as soon as you actually hit save and do some modifications in there. So we don't even have the crowded change logs in GitHub anymore, because now we only have changes if we actually make changes. So merge conflicts not as bad as they seem. Styles are hard to maintain across a project. Well, actually, not so much, because if we do this subclass approach, and actually this is what subclasses are meant to, we have a superclass and we have a subclass which is slightly altered, then we can actually have easier distribution of styles in the whole project while still having a preview. So basically, styles maintaining across the project also not that hard. If you do it, part in code, part in storyboards with designables. Next one, interface builder sucks for auto layout. This, and I have to admit, it was really true for the first version. I'm not really sure what they meant about doing that, but it wasn't really that great. But it got a lot better. So if you're still scared by auto layout, just give it another try in Xcode 8. It was already pretty good in Xcode 7, but it's just getting better, better, better over time. And someday we will be at a place where it's actually really usable, but I think we are almost there. And the last one, my favorite, I'm faster in code. And there's just one answer to it, and that is no, we're not. Because in the end, you have seen, as long as we don't have to run the app, we can just skip the whole build cycle. We don't have to do this, deploy it to device, wait until it started, scroll somewhere else, tap on buttons, fill out some forms to actually get to the view that you actually wanted to see, just to notice that it's off by 1 pixel. And you can just skip on all of that by having it live in there. So, some last questions. I think we're pretty close on time.
Yeah, it's just end. But if there's some questions,
if we have questions, then ask now or silence forever. And
What about, for example, different languages?
Yep, for different languages, there's a localization built into Xcode. Basically, you just add a new language to your project, and then you change the language of your storyboard file, so you can either have different storyboards for different languages, if you want to do it that way, or you can make copies where you just change the label text, which is also pretty easy. So basically, you localize all those labels right inside of Interface Builder, and then depending on what kind of language your device has, it will automatically load the right direction, the right translations for your current app. Basically, there's that would be like a whole other talk, but the short answer is basically there are tools inside of Xcode to change the labels per language. So just as I typed in the name for English, I could also type in the name for Polish, German, and Spanish. And then it will just do the right thing at the right time.
How do you deal with changing, I don't know, margins? If you set up the auto layout and it's, I don't know, 10 pixels on the right, 10 pixels on the left, and after, I don't know, a month of coding different views, designer comes and says, no, we want to have 15 pixels. And you've got all this encoded here and...
that really depends on how complicated the layout is. If it's only for a few places, I just directly code it into the storyboard, so then I have to change those margins manually. If it's part of some kind of subcomponent that repeats over the project, I'm usually using zips. And then again, it's only in one place. You can, of course, also use zips to render designables into your storyboards. This is where it kind of gets esoteric, because inside of the subclass you can do whatever you like to do, so you can also load a zip just to display it as a designable in a storyboard. And that way you still have that overview in your storyboard while maintaining the real styles in another file and just referencing it. Anything else? I guess because we're running short on time, I will be here later, so just bring all the questions you like. I have some material for you. One thing I didn't talk about today, because this would be a whole talk, is a tool called iAnimatable, which is kind of the missing part for animations inside of your apps, which you can just easily plug and play into your apps. Also, there's a video from Apple where they're kind of displaying their new capabilities in Xcode from last year. It's mostly still valid. And of course, my website under /code Europe, you will find these slides, and I will just upload the demo project a little bit later. The demo project that I showed at the beginning contains basically all the stuff I showed today, plus some extra stuff. So, for example, the dynamic labels, different font sizes, editor views with rounded corners and all that stuff is in there. And it's a complete native element, so it's not the image version anymore, it's a complete natified version of it, including static table views and scrolling in there. And with that, I would like to thank you for everyone who's coming today, and I'm still here around for questions if you have any. Otherwise, have a nice day and enjoy the conference.